Welcome everyone, I'm Yashni Padiachi and this is Africa Matters. Few countries on the continent are on track to meet the African Union's target to recycle at least 50% of their city's waste by the end of this year. So what's been done about it? We meet green innovators from Ghana, Uganda and South Africa who are providing local solutions to a global problem. Reduce, reuse and recycle, a rallying call that's become almost universal in urging people to cut down on waste and pollution. It's one of 17 ambitious global goals set by the United Nations in 2015, which aim to improve our daily lives and the planet by 2030. But the assessment done at the halfway point and released in July shows the world is off track in meeting most of its goals of eliminating extreme poverty and tackling climate change, among other challenges. So how are African nations doing when it comes to managing their natural resources and waste? The United Nations says African countries recycle only 4% of their municipal waste, even though some 70 to 80% of it is thought to be recyclable. According to the latest Sustainable Development Goals report, fossil fuel subsidies to consumers doubled from 2020 to 2021, despite commitments to phase them out and shift towards cleaner energy, with high-income countries paying more to satisfy demand. The report adds that sub-Saharan Africa loses 20% of its food harvest along the supply chain from farm to table, while Europe and North America lose about half of that at 9%. Let's hear more now from Immaculate Akelo. She's the founder and team leader of Kerry Naturals SMC Limited. She joins me from Lira in northern Uganda. Immaculate, it's great to have you on the program. Just talk us through why recycling doesn't seem to be as prevalent in Africa compared to some other parts of the world.
Well, thank you so much. So Africa, when you talk about recycling, it deals with a lot of things. We're talking about habit, we are talking about economic empowerment. So what is most affordable for many African entrepreneurs who are into especially drinks and beverages is that plastic is better to use and cheaper, is a cheaper alternative. But when you talk about plastic handling now, it doesn't go to the entrepreneur, it goes to the customer, the person who bought it. So the entrepreneur is not interested in how the plastic is being handled after they have sold out the beverage or the drink. So it's a nice idea, it's a beautiful idea, but when you look at the culture of Africans, the behavior of the people in Africa and the economic muscle, recycling tends to be quite an expensive option. So it's important for us to look at other cheaper options, because while that might work in other parts of the world, on the African continent, it's both not economically viable and it's not the behavior of the people. It has not been a common practice here on the continent.
Okay, so many factors there, but the work that you're actually doing proves that combating climate change through various projects can actually be profitable, especially for the women that you work for. It also empowers them. Just talk us through that and how it all works.
Okay, so I am a climate change activist that believes that climate change on the African continent is based on a lot of factors, and money one of them, gender being the other, and communities that we live in. If you live in urban centers or rural centers, it also affects on how you look at climate change. So through my business, Kerry Naturals, we believe that we are regenerating African forest cover through adding value to trees that grow locally in the communities. So the shea nut tree, which gives us shea butter, is a major plant that grows in northern Uganda. And for us as Kerry Naturals, we are adding value to shea butter in that way. And what we do is that we work with 150 rural women in northern Uganda, in the districts of Otuke, districts of Pader. We work with these women who are involved in the shea value chain. Some collect the nuts and we buy from them. Some of them help us in the sorting of the nuts. Some help us in the cleaning and drying of the nuts, and they get paid through the process.
But Immaculate, I'd like to understand from you, what do you think can be done to combat the effects of climate change being felt in Africa? Is it down to individuals, communities, or governments?
I think it's a mix of all of them. I've actually written a book entitled Money, Power, and Habits. And the book talks about how, for example, power from government, but also power from individuals and communities can combat climate change, but also that these are factors that contribute to climate change. If I'm to give you in a local context here in Africa, is that our governments are struggling to choose between going straight to solar and using solar power, which is a clean energy, and still exploiting hydroelectricity power. So they are still a bit confused. And that's a power dynamic that the government deals with. But from a local perspective, when we are talking about power, is that woman or that man with a tree in their compound, they are the ones that make a decision whether to cut down that tree for timber or cut down that tree for charcoal. And when we're talking about money, it's the same thing. Do I keep the tree standing and have no food, or I cut down the tree and sell it to buy food? So those are some of the things. And finally, the issue of habit. Governments are made of people, and these people develop some kind of habits, and the same with community. So it's a mix of government. They have their own roles that they're playing, the policies that they have, the direction they're taking as to development. And when we come back to communities, it's an issue of livelihood, it's an issue of habit, and it's an issue of power dynamics, both from the local levels as well as to the national levels.
Well, one of the communities that plays such a crucial role in waste management all over Africa are waste pickers. And it's estimated that they collect up to 90% of recyclables in some cities. So how can waste pickers be better utilized where it benefits them, especially on an economic level, as well as authorities and the environment?
So if you are a young person or if you're an entrepreneur who is into waste picking, I think one of the things that you should do is look at value addition. Most of the waste pickers pick back this waste, especially plastics, and sell them back to the companies. But I want you to start looking at, for instance, can you make this into tiles? Because there are now people who are turning plastic to tiles. There are people who are turning plastic to pavers. And some of this just needs rudimentary tools. You do not need those high-level tools, mechanized tools to use. Sometimes it's probably just a heat source, clay soil, and the plastic, and a mold to mold the shape. That is something easy. You can make mistakes as you try to make your first product, and with time you'll make it perfect. Then you'll sell pavers to the communities at a cheaper price. The same with if you're making tiles. Look at what people are doing, and I want to implore the waste pickers to go on YouTube. It's something called the University of YouTube. It will not give you the ideal way of how things are done, but it will give you an idea of where to start from, and then you can have your creativity around it to be able to come up with a perfect product. So be inquisitive and use the internet to your advantage. You have your smartphone there. If you're a waste picker, learn from other parts of the world. People are sharing knowledge everywhere.
It's clearly that there are so many ways to make this work. Immaculate Akela, really appreciate your insight and your time. Thanks so much for joining us here on Africa Matters. We have more stories coming up for you here on Africa Matters, including
green bananas are some of the most commonly grown fruits in tropical Africa. I am Darren Alan Cheyune at a plantation in central Uganda, where one innovator collects dried banana stalks to make furniture.
I am Isaac Kaleji. I will tell you how some discarded electronic waste that litters the environment is being given a second life.
We go to Uganda now, which is the world's second largest producer of bananas after India. Most farmers are only interested in the fruit, but one industrial art graduate in the East African country is making use of the banana stalks, crafting functional items like furniture. Darren Allen Cheyune reports.
Every week, Isaac Nkonge visits banana plantations in central Uganda. He cuts and collects fiber from the banana tree stalks, which he uses to make unique furniture. The banana fibers are considered waste by most farmers, but to Isaac, it is gold.
After university, I didn't have enough capital to venture into something which requires a lot of money. So I looked around, and everyone has banana plantations because 80% of Ugandans basically venture into banana banana farming. So, and I realized that the farmers, after taking the bunch of bananas, they leave the 70% of the other part of the banana plant to rot in the garden. So that is where I wanted to venture from, because there is available material, that which rots in the garden.
To design a new product, Isaac first sketches the concept on a computer. With help from a colleague, he then separates the inside and outside layers of each fiber with a knife. The differently textured layers are used to create the unique pieces.
On the top, we make a matte design. A matte design, that is the fiber. We make different lines, the horizontal lines and the vertical lines. So there is a way we pattern them so that they can bring out a good, brilliant design. And that approach is so much admired by most people. That is why we use it.
Isaac has mastered the art and craft of weaving a table like this. It takes him approximately 5 hours and about 8 1-meter-long sizable fibers from 2 banana tree stems to make you a table for your home or even your office. Since 2016, Isaac has produced more than 1,000 pieces, with some sold overseas to countries including Rwanda, Tanzania, and Spain. Experts in agro-processing believe that if work like Isaac's is supported, it can provide import substitution for the country.
Innovations like this should be supported by those that can. The government should come in, the stakeholders should come in to support such innovations, because they will help us to stop importing, because we can actually produce what should have been imported.
Isaac faces some challenges, including difficulty in finding usable fibers in the dry season. But by creating partnerships, he hopes to scale up production with other organic waste across the country. Darren Alancheyune, Africa Matters, Wakiso, Central Uganda.
These days, you simply can't live without electronic gadgets, but once they're outdated, discarding them safely becomes a challenge. In Ghana, some 52,000 tons of electronic waste have led to environmental pollution due to the lack of a proper disposable system. But a young entrepreneur is playing his part in getting rid of e-waste. Isaac Kaledzi has more from the capital, Accra.
Agudo Kweku Agabaz is busy installing these frames and sculptures at his showroom in Tamale, northern Ghana. He and his team built them all from discarded electronic gadgets like TV, radio, and computers. The gadgets are carefully and safely dismantled and the components then repurposed.
So this is an African map made out of most of the discarded electronic waste we find in the environment and then along the street. So we basically pick most of this waste up, and then we are able to sort them out and use the components such as the motherboard in building this beautiful artifact.
E-waste is a nuisance in many communities since there is no proper disposal plan or system, so people dump them everywhere. In cities like Accra, people even burn these gadgets to extract and sell the metallic component to make a living. But in the process, they pollute the environment. Agabaz wanted to change that, so he co-founded UpCycling, a waste management startup, in 2019 to provide upcycling solutions to the problem.
This has actually become a bigger challenge, and we at UpCycling currently working with the repairers, the scrap dealers, to basically find an innovative way of collecting most of this television set from the landfill and basically finding more alternative ways in reusing the components.
Agabaz's team pays at least $1 for each item they pick up. People have the option to drop their waste at Agabaz's shop, but going to households and dump points helps the team to educate others about the proper ways of disposing e-waste. Some clients are happy with what Agabaz and his team do.
Well, the challenge is that there is a mosquitoes inside, and it's not good for the environment itself. And how to sit here itself is not easy. But we are happy for that our friend Agabaz has come for it.
Reusing and recycling electronic waste to make the environment cleaner and safer is a top priority for Agabaz and his team. It is a daunting task, but the challenge remains limited access to funding to recover more of it in communities. They are determined to do their best. Today, Agabaz and his team are on this university campus to talk to students about their e-waste upcycling initiative. And they are making a good impression.
First, if a TV or a phone, laptop, and other accessories spoil, like they throw it away and then make the environment filthy and dirty. But now they have come out with an idea to make good use of those things.
I'm even surprised seeing waste from laptops, televisions, and other stuff used for all these designs. Actually, this is my first time seeing this.
There is also a business side to the initiative. Agabaz and his team say they have made a profit of about $5,000 from the online platform they started to sell their products. They cost anywhere from $5 to as high as $20. But for them, it's more about keeping the environment clean and safe. There is still a lot of work to be done in ridding Ghana of electronic waste. But Agabaz and his team estimate they've recycled about 40 tons of it. So they are simply playing their part by being innovative. Isaac Kalaji, Africa Matters, Ghana.
Kenya's Kisumu County is on the shores of Lake Victoria, the second largest body of fresh water in the world. Fishing is important for the communities living around the lake. But what happens to the tons of fish waste generated by the industry? Alexandria Mazala reports.
The bustling city of Kisumu's main economic activity is fishing. As the sun comes up over Lake Victoria, fishermen make their way to shore with the night's catch. According to the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, the vibrant fishing culture generates about 150,000 tons of waste a year.
What happens with fish waste, if unutilized for some use, it ends up back into our water systems. And what does that? It reintroduces the nutrients back into the water environments like the lakes, and that further fertilizes the lake, and we have excessive growth of the small plants, the floating plants called plankton. And those, when they are too excessive in the water system, they require oxygen, and they might deplete oxygen from the water.
Lake Victoria has come under increasing pressure in the last 2 decades. Fish production peaked in the early 90s, and currently catches of most species are showing downward trends. Despite this, there's still great demand for fish from Lake Victoria, chiefly Nile perch, tilapia and omena. An estimated 40 million people make their living from the vast natural resource which acts as a border between Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania.
Dunga Beach is one of the most popular areas in Kisumu, both for tourism and fishermen docking their boats after a night out on the lake. Here they sell their catch to waiting fishmongers who gut and clean the fish and sell it to the public.
Dennis Otieno, who grew up by Lake Victoria, could see a looming environmental threat emerging in the form of tons of discarded solid and liquid fish remains. The aquatic science graduate wanted to find a way to bring the waste back into the value chain.
With the facility that was at Kemfree, the labs, the inspiration, the mood, being in a research institute, just inspires you to push further. So therefore I started venturing into a number of stuff. Now, apart from the oil, I perfected the oil extraction processes and procedures. And to a level now we could use something that we could now patent.
The 28-year-old and his young team of 5 also designed this oil extraction chamber, which cost more than $500 to make.
We had fish waste. Number one was scales, and we said we are using scales to make the flowers and the earths. Okay. Number 2 was the offals. We use offals to make the fish oils, and then that fish oil we can also use it to make the soaps. Okay. Then number 3 is now the skin.
and we use the skin to make the gelatin, which we make in sheets or in powder form.
These methods are currently only being implemented locally, but they have the potential to be scaled up, addressing the environmental challenges posed by fish waste and creating jobs at the same time. Alexandria Majala, Africa Matters, Kisumu, Kenya.
The European Environment Agency says the consumption of clothing and footwear is expected to rise 63% by 2030. The effects of overconsumption in the fashion industry and reliance on synthetic fibers have a long-lasting environmental and social impact around the world. And in a bid to address this, 2 young South Africans are reimagining textile waste, as Bushra Guptash explains.
In the busy streets of Johannesburg, unwanted garments and footwear are waiting for a second home. Discarded clothes from Europe are on sale in the street markets known as Dunusa, and some of them will be given a fresh lease of life thanks to the talents of local artists.
The question that we're trying to answer with the project is really the disparity between the North and the South, you know, how certain parts of Africa become dumping grounds for European countries. And I think that this project is sort of answering that question, or at least bringing a light to that issue. You know, we wanna have fun, we wanna recreate, at the same time we wanna answer questions, we wanna stir conversations.
According to a new report from the European Environment Agency, around 5.8 million metric tons of textiles are discarded each year in the EU. That's the equivalent of 11 kilograms per person. And 2 aspiring designers, Kumo Morajela and Klein Mays, are trying to tackle this overconsumption by upcycling Western fashion waste with African-inspired designs.
We all come from houses of color, basically. I'm black, he's colored, and within our whole culture, it's always emphasized that we don't waste because we cherish and we actually connect to the things that we own. So for us to waste is kind of like, it's backwards thinking within what we believe, right? And we kind of want to reflect that and transcend that within our garments.
Their collection is being showcased at an international arts program in Berlin.
In terms of blending the cultures, or blending a European and African culture, I think this was a really dope starting point, even though this was the last garment that we did. But this is sort of reminiscent of what a grandmother would wear, what a Tani would wear, you know. Their fabrics, they would go for rather ribbed fabrics, you know, woven fabrics. And the doily at the bottom is just a nice touch because this is like reminiscent of what you'd find on in a colored family's household on a coffee table. And I think we just wanted to put that together in a garment that could also, you know, talk to the European aesthetics.
The young artists emphasize the differences between 2 cultures.
On the left side, we have this very utilitarian denim European style with the drapings that is also very reminiscent of current fashion trends, current European fashion trends. And on the other side, it's these Cortini pleats with the Zulu beads. That's just, and somehow it might look like a mismatch, but it makes so much sense together, you know. And I think that's very reminiscent, or that's very indicative of who we are as designers, and also as Gen Z, but also as South Africans.
And it's also a perfect match, bringing together their love for fashion and the planet. Bushra Guptash, Africa Matters.
And this week we explore Kisangani, a city in the northeastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. Local authorities have given it the name City of Hope because of its historical significance during the country's struggle for independence. Let's take a closer look. And that's our show this week. But share your thoughts about how you're making the planet a better place, or ideas on what you'd like us to cover on Twitter using the hashtag Africa Matters. You can also watch this episode and plenty more on YouTube. Just search for Africa Matters TRT World. And remember to like, comment, and share. I'll see you again next week.